Well, boys, today's tomorrow, and man, this is just sad. All right, this is one of the saddest days for anyone on the internet because Sneako actually was out here debating laps around Moist Critical, and it was on a subject that I think we all can agree on. Right, Moist Critical should have just slam dunked it, nice little layup, right? But it didn't go down all that good at all for Mr. Charlie White. Somehow, Sneako was able to debate so hard to where Moist Critical started to look like an idiot, especially on the topic of age of consent. Now, I think we all agree. None of us want to go to jail, alright? Past the moral thing, I think we all can agree. No one wants to go to jail, so the best thing to do to avoid going to jail is just not to talk to anyone below the age of 18. We don't have to have a debate on it, right? We don't have to be like, well, this, that, or the third, or the morals say. We all agree, if you do this action, you go to jail. If you rob someone, it doesn't matter how broke you are, you go to jail. Now, obviously there's nuance in everything, and even in this debate here, Sneako brought up some nuance, and even Critical brought up some nuance in this whole age of consent thing. But I think we all can agree that no one on the internet has the mental bandwidth to actually, think that hard, alright? We all see the headlines and then we react, alright? Let's not act like we're philosophers of our time. There's a reason why there's lawyers and there's judges, alright? On the internet, we all see the headline, and whatever tone it's in is how we respond. If it's like, person robbed someone to pay for his family's doctor bills, we'll all be like, oh man, I don't know how to feel about this. If the person that got robbed was extremely rich, do I really care? Not really. But if the person that he robbed was middle class, do I really care? I'm like, slightly more, but also not really, because at the end of the day, it wasn't me, because none of us really cared that hard. But if the headline just said, person robbed someone, and that was it, we will all be like, all right, screw that guy. He should be underneath the jail. Why would you rob someone? Even though both things do the same amount of damage to the person, doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, and both articles have the same underlining nuance, but one told you what it was and the other one didn't. So all this comes back to, for some reason, I don't even know why, Moist Critical decided to debate Sneako again, because I'm pretty sure it was last year or 2 years ago he debated Sneako whenever Sneako was in Japan, and obviously Charlie came out of that looking like a true saint, alright? He came out of that looking like John Wick just got his dog back. You know, it's magazines, not clips. You know how Charlie was back then, you know, real savage. But it seems like throughout this whole debate, Charlie was starting to power down, alright? Because he started off strong telling Sneako, bro, it's weird that you think the age of consent shouldn't exist and it should be the age of maturity, which is different in many different people. And Charlie's whole point was, the reason why we have the age of consent is because 18 is probably the year where everyone is at least mature, sexually mature fully. There is no person oh, I haven't went through puberty yet. If you haven't went through puberty at 18, I don't know what to tell you, my guy. You're more than a late bloomer. So Charlie was trying to argue that at 18, you're probably somewhere near being an adult, or at least an adult at that point, right? Mentally and physically, right? You're not probably a full-on adult. You're probably still living at home with your parents. You're probably still, working your first ever job, right? You're probably still going to high school, but at 18 is whenever you become legally an adult. And Sneako was debating that it shouldn't be age at all. It should be whenever you're mature and ready, which I'm gonna be honest here, even Sneako said it's different for everyone. That's why the law is 18, so everyone knows around this age is probably whenever you're mature and ready. Just because someone went through puberty at 15, 16 doesn't mean everyone else around them did.
I'm talking about your personal beliefs. Do you think someone in their 20s should be able to marry a 15 or 16-year-old?
To someone in their 20s should be, I mean, I personally wouldn't do it. I don't know many people who would do it. The maturity for people in the teenagers in the West is getting much worse, but there are...
We're talking globally. Let's just talk globally. Do you think it is okay for... I'm not talking about just you specifically anymore. Anyone. Do you think it's okay for anyone in their 20s, an adult, to marry a 15 or 16-year-old?
A 21-year-old, if there was a marriage where the father consented and the daughter consented, and it was both good on both families and they wanted to do it, why am I going to get involved? Why should we get the government involved?
Well,
why would I tell them if everybody's consenting, if everybody's okay with it, if the parents are okay with it, If nobody's being harmed, if it's going to be okay, if they're both abiding by the rules and they're not hurting each other, why not?
But they're still, like, they're at best a sophomore in high school. They can't consent to something like that. Like, do you...
So then the debate went past age of consent at this point because Sneako started to realize, all right, now it's time for me to inject my own logic into this debate, which he started to say, well, in my opinion, I don't think you should have sex out of wedlock, which means, getting married and having children. So in Sneako's case, he's saying, well, I mean, like, if the person is planning on living with this person forever, then why should they not be able to, get married at whatever age that they want to get married at instead of it being 18? Because I'm assuming in Sneako's head, I'm just trying my best to apply his logic to reality. That Sneako wants to encourage people, if you are going to have sex with one person for the rest of your life, create as many kids as you can, and guess what? Don't have adultery sex outside of your marriage, is what I'm assuming he's trying to say here. And also, don't just dump and leave people after you have sex with them. That is essentially what Sneako is saying. He doesn't want you to be able to just dump people as soon as you get what you want out of them. He wants you to actually have, like, an actual relationship with them. So after that whole spiel, Moist Critical decided to hit Sneako with the logic. We live in a society, and the age of consent is 18. But Sneako obviously decided, you know what, time to just break it out. Alright, time to break out my signature move. The old adage of they're right there on the cusp, but they're not there yet. So Sneako brought out that, what if a 21-year-old wanted to have sex with a 17-year-old at the 364 days before they turn 18? And he asked Moist Critical if that would make the 21-year-old a pedo. And instead of Moist Critical standing on business saying yes, this is what he said.
Say here that if a 21-year-old got married to a 17-year-old who was almost 18, is that 21-year-old a pedophile?
I would say that is a morally bad thing to do for sure.
Not morally bad. Not morally bad. Is that?
I wouldn't call them a pedophile.
So when does somebody become a pedophile?
I would say when you have this position, you're
not answering the question.
And you are. I'm explaining it.
Okay.
When you are in your 20s and you start preying upon someone who is still a child, a 15, 16, 14, anything under 18, a 21 and a 17-year-old.
But you still haven't specifically defined what a child is.
I did.
So then why? Okay, there you go. So if pedophile is love of children, and your definition of adult starts at 18, if the 21-year-old marries a 17-year-old who's turning 18 tomorrow, he is a pedophile based off your definition.
As I said, if he would wait, he would not be. Then yeah,
well, not wait. Based off your definition, that person's
in that position. There is no reason to not wait for the legally established, agreed upon definition of when you stop being a child.
Okay, so now we get into the question of whether the pedophile thing, is that a moral answer or a legal answer? Because it seems like morally, it's pretty much, okay, it's almost there. That morally, that's not a pedophile. Legally, it is. But those are two different things.
But they don't need to be. They can coexist. You recognize that, right?
No. Then that's when you muddy up morality with the law. Now you're allowing the government to determine morality, and that's where things get muddied up. Because if they changed it with like they did before, like 200 years ago in the 1800s when it was the age of 10, that was fine. Legally back then, they were not a pedophile. Today, legally, they are a pedophile.
So this is where Sneako starts debating laps around Moist Critical. Because essentially, he goes down the whole line of the government shouldn't be able to apply what they believe the morals are, because at any point, the morals can change. Which technically, Sneako's not wrong, because the government changes and redoes laws all the time. I'm like, one thing that half the government is trying to change now are gun laws. They're trying to say you shouldn't be allowed to own a gun, even though back whenever the country was founded, everyone was like, yeah, you should be able to own a gun, yeah. And some people think it's morally wrong to own a gun and to use a gun. There are people out there that do think that, and there are people out there in the government that do think that, even though it's completely legal right now. But if it became illegal tomorrow, literally half the US would probably go to jail or start a civil war over this gun thing. Now, in my opinion, I think Moist Critical should have started bringing up power dynamics, more of like, oh, well, whenever you're this far along in life, you probably have more experience doing things or talking to people, so you know how to coax stuff out of people that you want. I really don't know what Sneako would say around that, other than like, oh, the father wouldn't allow that, which I guess technically seeing that Sneako also believes like, oh, the father should also be consenting you marrying their child, or that, you know, some people literally don't even stop developing until they're actually 25, which is true. You don't get your full frontal cortex until you're 25, and that's when you start actually seeing the world for what it actually is. So in Sneako's mind, you're probably still thinking like the person you're probably getting married to. Which they did bring up the whole, well, what if they did raise the age to 25? And Moist Critical essentially said, yeah, okay, if the age became 25 as the age of consent, whatever. Which totally blew his whole argument of why 18 is the age of consent out of the water. Because with that logic, that means he can date people under the age of 18. So like, if someone's like 24, 364, they could probably date a 13-year-old, because why would Moist Critical care, seeing that both people, in his eyes, legally are minors now? Because Moist Critical's whole argument is, legally, it is illegal to do this. And then he's also trying to stand on a whole moral thing, but Sneako's whole moral thing is, just as long as you're actually trying to have a relationship with the person and you're not actually trying to harm them in any way, it doesn't matter. Which, in my opinion, I'm just saying here, law's law. 18, boys. 18. Let's just get that back on the table. 18. So now they go into this whole moral claim of, well, what's morally right? And then essentially they get all the way down to incest.
There's no consistency there.
But
You
we
can't
have-
allow
there
the
is.
you
We
can't
have
allow the
grown.
government to determine morality because it changes all the time. Tomorrow, if the U.S. government legalized bestiality, if the government legalized incest, based off your logic, there'd be no reason why that's wrong. Can I ask you, Moise, do you think that incest is wrong?
Yes.
Why is incest wrong?
There is under no circumstances any excuse for anyone of the same bloodline to be romantic like that. By no means at all.
Why?
I really think it should be pretty obvious why.
I don't know why.
So
I'm asking you.
even, I know where you're going with this, because I've heard this argument from another streamer before about like the ethics of incest. If they don't have a kid and thus don't pass down like bad genes that lead to a bad child. I've heard this before.
But so I want
don't-
to hear your answer, because are we going with legal or are we going to follow some sort of morality,
It is
some
going-
sort of consistent morality? Why is incest wrong?
Incest is wrong because I believe that no family dynamic should ever include a sexual relation.
Why?
I don't think that, because it is not healthy. It is a bad thing to do. It
Why-
is
oh,
a
you're going-
horrible thing to subject someone to.
But why is it horrible? Because who told you that?
It's what I believe. And also, if you do have a child with your own kin, the child suffers.
Okay, but say it's two brothers, two gay brothers, Chris Tyson and other Chris Tyson and Chris. If they're two brothers and they decide to be in a no, genuine question. It's what you believe in. I want to figure out where your beliefs come from. You personally believe that.
My beliefs come from a place of what I believe to be moral, where I don't believe that anyone in the same family has any position to be romantic with one another. I don't think
So
that that's a
your
healthy
morality
dynamic.
comes from yourself.
My morality comes from like the world around me. I don't have.
Okay, so
brothers or
if
sisters
the
or anything
morality
like
comes
that.
from the
So-
world around you, then by your logic, if you lived in America in the 1800s where the age of 10 was okay and where the age of 7 was okay in England just 200 years ago, if you followed the world around you, that would be okay. That was fine.
And it's not now because we've.
Well, sorry that the clip cut off there, but essentially Moist Critical was trying to say that we have evolved as a society and we realize that now that is wrong. Which Critical isn't wrong. We can realize that things that happened in the 1800s are wrong now. Like, we all can agree, well, I hope we all can agree, I don't know about Sneako, that slavery is wrong, right? We all can say, like, back then, everyone thought, well, not everyone, even back then people thought that was wrong, but like, back then, people that own slaves were like, why is it wrong that I own a slave? It's my slave, I bought it, who cares? But now we can be like, if you own a person, you're a piece of shit. Right, as humans, we learn and evolve over time. Just because, like, whenever you was 12, you thought, oh man, beating up people is cool, doesn't mean whenever you're 25, you can still think the same thing. You'll probably think, wow, I was really cringe back then. But this is where the debate starts to go downhill for Critical, because essentially they get into the whole transgender arc of this anime, and instead of Moist Critical using his logic and reasoning like he did with the whole age of consent thing, he decided to go with his morals and what he thought was morally right.
Do you believe that somebody can go through hormone therapy? Can they change their gender if they're a child?
I think that's totally fine as long as everyone is consenting, as you agree with.
Okay, so as long as
If
everyone...
your parents are okay with it and you are okay with it, I think that's totally a familial decision to make, yeah.
Okay, so a child can cut their penis off and take hormone blockers and change their biology forever, but they can't get married?
Well, that's a decision that now extends beyond the family, because now you're bringing in a different party. So if you have someone that's your age coming in saying, I want to marry that child, I don't think that can happen under any circumstance.
So,
no.
But it's still a personal decision. You're still deciding.
Because there's
take the other party out of the equation.
Decision now.
It's a personal
It's
decision.
not.
If I'm 16 and I personally want to marry this girl, she's beautiful. She's 21 years old. Her family wants to do it. My family wants to do it. You're saying I can't do that. We're both consenting. I'm ready to go. I'm physically mature, but I'm not allowed to marry because Moy says that woman's a pedophile. But if then the next day I leave it, I'm depressed, I want to cut my penis off, I can go right into the clinic, snip it off, and start taking HRT like Chris Tyson. That's a society that makes sense to you?
It is. I believe everyone has I believe everyone has the right to do with their body what they want to do.
So this is where a lot of Moist Critical's logic and reasoning started to break down, because in Moist Critical's eyes, you can't consent to sex or marriage with an adult. All right, we all agree here, you can't do that. But then he contradicted himself by saying, well, you can permanently alter your body. I'm pretty sure the age that they were like arguing was like 9 or some shit. So it's like, bro, do you not see your own logic here? Like, if you don't think like, hey, this person isn't mature enough, nor mentally or physically to have sex, something that even if you think will hurt someone, I'm like, you can always recover from it. You can't recover from cutting your own dick off, all right? I'm just saying here. I understand that, Moist Critical is trying his best to be, like, on the side of reason, right? He's trying to be like, well, it is your body. You can do with it as you want. But, like, you don't have your own autonomy at, like, 9. There's a reason why, until 18, you can't have sex with people over the age of 18. Now, Critical did put in his statement that just as long as the parents are also consenting, who cares? Which is the exact same logic Sneako is using for why I fucking hate doing why am I making this video? But it's the exact same logic that Sneako is using for why you should be able to marry anyone of any age at any time. Essentially, the whole thing breaks down to Moist Critical and Sneako actually agree. Alright, they actually agree that just as long as the parents are consenting, who cares? It's none of our business. Because as soon as it comes to a subject that Moist Critical thinks, well, this is more nuanced, I don't know, maybe, just as long as the parents are informed, that's whenever he starts thinking, I guess, more like rationally, I don't know. That's whenever he starts thinking, well, it's not between just the kid and the doctor, it's between the kid, the doctor, and the family. Just like how the marriage between the kid, the other person, and the family. The whole argument breaks down to they essentially agree, all right? They essentially agree, except for Moist Critical doesn't want to agree with Sneako at all, because, Moist Critical is saying, I follow the law. The law says this. We don't really have a law on if transgender people can transgender at the age of 9. So just as long as the family consents, who cares? But I'm assuming if there was a law saying that no, you can't transgender until you're 18, I'm sure Moist Critical will update his statement to say no, until 18 you can't transgender. But at that point, you're not even like having your own opinion. You're just waiting for someone else to update their own opinion, and then that's whenever you make up your own opinion. Well, I guess that's not you making up your own opinion. That's more of just you followed someone else's opinion, which is a lot of people's argument for why Moist Critical lost this whole argument, because he didn't Like, just stand ground. If he thinks 18 is the age of consent, the 21-year-old should have been called a pedo, even if the person was 17, 364. The 21-year-old should have been called a pedo. Like, he doesn't stand on his own principles, right? If he doesn't believe you can consent until 18, that means you can't consent to a life-changing medical procedure until 18, unless it's literally something you actually need, like a heart transplant. This is purely a cosmetic thing. Even if it is for you mentally, it is a purely cosmetic thing. You don't need it to survive. But in Moist Critical's eyes, just as long as you consent and you get your parents' consent, you can do this life-changing thing at, the age of 9. But that logic doesn't, track well whenever you're also saying, well, you can't get married at 9. Like, that's stupid. But you can get cosmetic, life-changing surgery at the age of 9. You see the logic here? It doesn't really follow. Now, if he continued to say, no, I think you should wait till 18 before you become transgender, I think, everyone would be on Moist Critical's side. They'll all be like, makes sense to me. You can't consent to sex until, the age of 18. How come you can consent to literally getting your dick chopped off? But obviously, after this whole stream of them essentially saying, we agree to disagree, whenever they both essentially kind of agree, technically, seeing that Moist Critical technically agrees with them, like, yeah, you can consent to things whenever you're underage. But after this whole thing, Moist Critical wanted to clarify the whole 9-year-old chopping off their dick thing.
You can get therapy, you can go through the process of making that decision. I thought that's what it was. I thought he was just speaking in hyperbole with the dick cutting off. I thought that's what we were talking about. And then if you decide that's the path you want to take, it is your body. You can do that. You can make that decision once you become of age to make a decision like that. I just don't understand how it got so muddled. Half of the conversation was hyperbole, and apparently that one was literal. Or it's a very malicious attack on what I'm trying to say, or a misunderstanding. I don't know. But I think I'm just going to call it there.
I mean, like, Moist Critical still kind of agrees with him that just as long as the parents consent, at the age of 9, the child can have some autonomy of choosing their fate in life. And hopefully they choose well. Unlike Boogie2988, who got a actual tattoo on his face. This man literally went insane. Click this video right here, boys, to find out what happened to Boogie the other day. But other than that, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment down below, and pray for my sanity, boys. I'll see you all tomorrow.